let's get started here. We're on the third Sunday of dealing with the book of Job in the Handbook of Wisdom books and Psalms. And so what I wanted to do is to rehash a couple things and give you a slightly different perspective, because I think this gives you kind of an overview of why the people respond the way they do. And folks in the back row in the gallery, you're always welcome to come sit up at the table.
Are we?
The table is always open for everyone.
And we like to see your smiling faces.
Yes.
Yes,
Mom
but there's
Mom can't crank her neck around.
there's a nice little breeze back
Look
here.
at the screen. I'll sit up here.
Thank you. We got one convert. So.
And she brought cards.
I do. I saw. Okay.
Now we know why you're on that.
They were in the cleaning bucket. I don't know. They're going in the game bucket.
Oh, good. Well, last week I mentioned about retribution theology, and I wanted to just go through a different perspective on it, and which basically says the same thing, but in a slightly different language. So, okay, so here we go. So I'd see that the retribution principle is that God sees to it that good people prosper and bad people get punished. That's one aspect. And you can totally disagree with this. Many of us probably will, but I'm trying to explain to you the perspective of the friends of Job and Job himself. Secondly, that the greater the suffering, the greater the sin. So since Job had so much taken away from him, obviously, based on this principle, he had lots of sins. On a national level, this principle was built into the covenant, so that it encouraged people to follow the covenant, because if you followed the covenant, then you would prosper. If you didn't, you wouldn't. And on an individual level, it enables God to maintain justice. Okay. All characters in the book believe in the retribution principle or retribution theology, whichever phrase you want to use. So each of the three friends plus Eliphaz and Job, all of them basically believe in this kind of concept that God rewards people who are good and punishes those who are bad. Satan, or Satan, and I'm probably going to just call him Satan, but I'll explain to you the difference in a second here, creates tension, because if God operates using this retribution principle, people are prevented from developing true righteousness. Okay, so if the reward is there, you're gonna do what God says, and it doesn't it guarantees a reward at the end, and prevents people from developing true righteousness. This is again this kind of the background to the retribution principle. So if God doesn't, then people like Job will conclude that God is unjust. You see the paradox that good old Satan is giving us a paradox, or some tension here, that if this principle works, then God will reward good people. But if good people have tragedies in their lives, then obviously God is unjust. So you get to take your pick. Okay, again, that's just kind of a review from last week. I wanted to reintroduce you that retribution principle of theology. And then I thought you might enjoy this 13th century image of Satan, or Satan, whichever you prefer, from a Benedictine monastery. And the difference here is, if you take a look at the Hebrew pronunciation of Satan, the Satan, and so Old Testament, the Jewish belief is in a Satan who is a tempts human. He's an accuser. If you look at the New Testament, it's pronounced Satan, and he is a rebellious angel who is the adversary of God. and the Lord of evil. So he's going to show up, obviously, and we've already talked about those verses where he shows up. But I thought you'd like to see a firsthand drawing of Satan, Satan, just for your edification. Pardon?
Herman painted that. Herman the recluse.
Yes, it was Herman the recluse in the Benedictine monastery in the 13th century. So
I like the red claw.
yeah,
He's snorting something.
I'm wondering how he eats and how he walks, because those male fingernails are pretty long.
I've seen people with those long.
I was gonna say, it's just modern women's.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Oh no!
No.
There's
No,
some
just the
people
fingernails.
that have nails that long and they function every day, and I
It's
don't
true.
know how.
Yeah.
I bet
Yeah.
I
I hope
see
they're not
Tony
douches.
Yeah.
There are a few of them that are, and I'm just like,
Ooh.
Okay, well, moving right along. Eliphaz makes several speeches, and what I've tried to do is put together the different speeches so you see a sense of what they're really saying. Because if we go verse by verse, sometimes it gets lost. So in Eliphaz's first speech, he says, "Who, being innocent, has ever perished, or where have the upright been destroyed?" Again, if you're good, you're going to be rewarded. You're not going to be punished. You're not going to be destroyed. It says, "Call if you will, but who will answer you? To which of the holy ones will you turn?" Who are the holy ones? Shouldn't it be the Holy One?
Hebrew,
Pardon?
the priests. Higher up.
Higher up.
Okay.
Well, there are two speculations on what this is referring to. One is it's referring to the angels, because there were multiple angels. And the other is that this book of Job is often historically placed as being prior to Abraham. And there was more of a belief among the Hebrews and the other nations of multiple gods. So Job does, and remember we talked last week and the week before about Job is not, he's in Canaan. He's outside of, I take it back, he's in Edom, he's outside of Canaan. We're not talking about Hebrew, we're talking about non-Hebrew individuals. So it says, "For hardship does not spring from the soil, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. Yet man is born to trouble as surely as sparks fly upward." Again, it's kind of that repeat of the fact that trouble doesn't just happen. It happens because, according to this retribution theology, it happens because people make bad choices. They sin, they make errors. Eliphaz goes on and says, "If I were you, I would appeal to God. I would lay my caution." I'm going to minimize this so that we cover it. "I would lay my cause before him. He performs wonders that cannot be fathomed, miracles that cannot be counted." And I'm giving you the references here, but I'm also skipping a lot of verses between. I'm trying to give you just the verses, summarize the argument. "The lowly he sets on high, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He catches the wise in their craftiness, and the schemes of the wily are swept away." Anybody have a problem with that verse? Or any reaction to it?
I feel like it's aspirational, but it's not necessarily realistic.
Okay. Other comments?
Goes along with the New Testament, the first shall be last and the last shall be first.
Okay.
And the Beatitudes.
Somehow there's an awful lot of schemes of the Bible that don't get swept away.
Okay. One of the problems all the way through Job is that our personal life experience probably doesn't equate with what Job's friends are saying. And there's also nobody mentioned this. He catches the wise in their craftiness. Isn't it a goal to be wise? And if so, why is there this negative craftiness attached to it? Now, this is one of the three trends.
What I didn't like about that is he catches.
Yeah.
Like there's a trap set for us.
Yeah. Well, and according to retribution theology, God is there always watching us, and when we make a misstep, that's when tragedy falls. If we do good things, then blessings follow.
Well, it's also saying that the wise, make mistakes too.
Okay.
That they're not perfect because they're wise.
Okay. Eliphaz goes on to say, he saves the needy from the sword in their mouth. He saves them from the clutches of the powerful, so the poor have hope, and injustice shuts its mouth. Comments on that? No? No comment, or no, it doesn't happen?
No comment.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what sword in their mouth.
When they're endangered, when they're under attack. And again, this will become repetitious, but I think we all know cases where people who are needy, who are good people, are not saved from the clutches of the powerful. The poor have hope and injustice. They have hope, but they also experience injustice.
Well, I do like the phrase, the injustice shuts its mouth.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting personification.
Yeah, it is. And he continues. And again, keep in mind the headline. Eliphaz is saying, God blesses those who seek him. So blessed is the one whom God corrects. So do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. And Shaddai is the term that's used throughout Job for the Almighty. For he wounds, but he also binds up. He injures, but his hands also heal. Pause for comments.
I guess the implication is that Job is being disciplined or punished by a wise and loving God, but still, if we're talking about retribution, then somehow he messed up.
Okay. You will laugh at destruction and famine, and need not fear the wild animals, for you will have a covenant with the stones of the field, and the wild animals, and will be at peace with you. Your tent is secure. You will take stock of your property and find nothing missing. Your children will be many, and your descendants like the grass of the earth. So again, this friend of Job is picturing where everything will be hunky-dory. That's a modern day term. Everything will be great if you simply seek God. He will bless you if you follow his rules. And what it doesn't take into account is the person who steals into your tent and takes your widescreen TV. We have examined this, and it is true. So hear it and apply it to yourself. So Eliphaz is basically saying, hey, we've looked at life, we've looked at everything around us, and this much is true. God rewards those who honor him by following his his commandments and punishes those others. So Job responds with, if only my anguish could be weighed and all my misery be placed on the scales, it would surely outweigh the sand of the sea. No wonder my words have been impetuous. Impetuous, thank you. The arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks in their poison. God's terrors are marshaled against me. So, despite what his first friend has said, he's feeling pretty much like God has turned against him, even though he believes he's lived a righteous life. And the author of Job has indicated that a righteous life. Oh, well, not now. Telling me it's time to restart. I don't think we'll restart today. Oh, that I might have my request that God would be willing to crush me, to let loose his hands and cut off my life. Then I would still have this consolation that I had not denied the words of the Holy One. Why is he saying that? What's happened to Job to this point in time?
Lost everything.
Yeah, he's lost everything. His children are dead. His flocks are stolen or dead. And then this is after Satan has already been able to give him boils and sores from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. The man's pretty miserable. And so he's saying, crush me, Lord. Kill me before I have a chance to really get upset and deny the words of God. I guess that's one approach to staying righteous. Just die early. It says, do I have any power to help myself? Not that success has been driven from me. Oops, where to go here? No, sorry. I think I went wrong way. Okay, here we go. Now you too have proven to be of no help. This is Job to his companions. He's at least being very honest with them. You see something dreadful and are afraid. Have I ever said, give something on my behalf, pay a ransom for me from your wealth, deliver me from the hand of the enemy, rescue me from the clutches of the ruthless. Teach me and I will be quiet. Show me where I have been wrong. So he's getting pretty frustrated with his three, quote, friends who are basically telling him that he must certainly have sinned. Okay. Does that sound at all human-like? He's gotten very frustrated. Relent, do not be unjust. Reconsider, for my integrity is at stake. Is there any wickedness on my lips? Can my mouth not discern malice? So again, he's proclaiming his innocence, and he's proclaiming it to these friends because he doesn't want to say anything against God. And we've talked about the fact that Job is poetry. And this is one section that I think is probably speaks pretty clearly about the futility of life, at least from his standpoint. He says, do not mortals have hard service on earth? Are not their days like those of hired laborers, like a slave longing for the evening shadows, or a hired laborer waiting to be paid? So I have been allotted months of futility, and nights of misery have been assigned to me. When I lie down, I think, how long before I get up? The night drags on, and I toss and turn until dawn. My body is clothed with worms and scabs. My skin is broken and festering. He doesn't sound like a happy man.
But otherwise, things are great.
Yeah, that's true.
I bet he's more empathetic after this.
Yeah.
I think, it's important to keep in mind that Job apparently was very wealthy before everything was taken away. So his perspective of how life was and how life is now is, you can appreciate why all the hyperbole.
Yeah.
But there are people who live like this all the time. That's just their life. That's just their day-to-day existence. It's toiling in the earth and eating hand to mouth and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much of this is brought on Joe because of where he had been compared to where he is.
Yeah, and the hired labor waiting to be paid. I've known many friends who did live payday to payday, waiting to be paid. Nights of misery have been assigned to me. I've had friends and family who suffered through the night, who couldn't breathe, or had other issues, and just couldn't get the 7 or 8 hours of sleep that they needed. So it's not that far different distant from what people are experiencing even today. And many of us are very fortunate that we don't experience that out of the situation. Therefore, I will not keep silent. I will speak out in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. When I think my bed will comfort me and my couch will ease my complaint, even then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me with visions. I despise my life. I would not live forever. Let me alone. My days have no meaning. So again, he's talking about the futility of experiencing. What is mankind that you make so much of them, that you give them so much attention, that you examine them every morning, test them every moment? And again, that's kind of a reference back to this retribution theology, where you're worried about every act you make, every move you make, because God is watching, and He's going to punish you or reward you. I'm not sure that's how most of us live today, but it certainly was real for Job. If I have sinned, what have I done to you? You see everything we do. Why have you made me your target? Why do you not pardon my offenses and forgive my sins?
I do like how he kind of says to his friends, you don't know what you're talking about, so I'm going to turn and ask God again if I can get some help from God, because you're not, my friend isn't helping. So
Well,
like,
did I cut out somebody? Somebody going to say something? Okay. So what I was going to say is, I think no matter how good your life is, there are times when you wonder why God allows bad things to happen to you. When you see friends and family and others suffering, you really wonder. And so Job is just simply voicing those concerns. And it's been speculated that one of the strong reasons for the book of Job being, well, first of all, it's been compared to like the parables of Jesus, teach a lesson. And the lesson it is teaching is up to each of us to decide, but it certainly gives voice to humans' concern that why do people suffer? Why do bad things happen to people who appear to be good people?
It also says, if you persevere, God will reward you in the end.
Yeah. I read an interesting commentary that basically said that Hebrews, the Jews, did not at this point in time uniformly believe in life after death, and that makes it even more crucial that God reward those people who are good and punish those people who do bad. So I'm not sure I 100% agree with that view of Judaism, but there are sects, the Sadducees and others, even later Jesus' time, did not believe in the life after death. So if it's all in this world, then you can understand the concern that why are these bad things happening to me? I followed all the commandments. I've done what I should be doing.
You know, it's interesting in the previous two sentences, he says that, you know, if I done to you, my target. Very next sentence, he said, well, if I did something wrong, I did forgive me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So was he a sinner or wasn't he a sinner? Well, we're all sinners, I guess.
Yeah.
From that standpoint. So I wonder if Job is a little, thinks a little highly of himself, I guess.
Well, if that's the only explanation for bad things happening, is that you must have done something wrong, you're being punished, you probably would stop questioning even in your own self whether what you were doing was, you must be doing something. I mean, and everyone around you is judging you too. So
Yeah, that's, yeah. I know, there actually is the book. What
JB.
about, when bad things happen to
yeah.
good people by a rabbi,
Yeah.
Kirshner, and it was because his son died, and he could understand that, and I know my mother read that after my father passed away at 49, so yeah, you know, that was pretty early in their life, and I think his whole premise is that there are things outside of anybody's control, and not where we're supposed to be at as a perfect world and perfect whatever, but it definitely talks about that, and I think for him, he was living through his Jewish faith and these kind of considerations that went in Job.
Those verses that Paul referenced remind me that sometimes I can remember being a child and doing something and my parents getting upset, and I'm not sure what rule I broke. You know, sometimes you just don't know what the rules are, or sometimes doing something at work and finding that some people are upset with you, and you're wondering why. What did I do? So I think that if God's watching him constantly and judging every action he makes, I think it's logical for Job to say, what did I do wrong? And if I did something wrong, please forgive me. The next few slides. Next few slides, I wanted to talk about what each of the three friends basically say, and it takes quite a number of chapters to cover all that. So, in Eliphaz, the first speech, he focuses on the theme of the innocent prospering. In other words, because Job is being afflicted, he obviously has done something wrong. So that's one thing. In his second speech, he says, accuses Job of not fearing God. And remember that the fear of God, it comes up a couple times in Scripture. One is the fear of God is the first step towards faith for some people. And the other, I can't remember the other. My mind just went blank. So, but basically, if he feared God, the concept is if he feared God, he would not face such suffering. Oh, that's the other thing. The retribution theology basically says that the foundation of our allegiance to God is our fear of God. So it shows up a couple times. And stop me at any point if you have a comment. Or third speech, he accuses Job of great wrongdoing. Is not your wickedness great, and are not your sins endless? He lists all of Job's sins in verses 6 to 9. And God would only allow great evil to befall someone who had done something very evil. And again, that's back to that. Yeah. So Eliphaz, these are the points that he makes, that the innocent prosper. Job must have done something terribly wrong, or he wouldn't be afflicted, and that he obviously doesn't fear God. Bildad says to Job, in his first speech, that Job must repent of his wrongdoing. If he does, all material things will be restored. And the quote is, if you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, even now, he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state. And the deduction, of course, is, or the obvious suggestion is that Job is not pure and he's not upright. So if you repent, this is the first point that Bildad makes. If you repent, God will restore to you everything you've lost. Second speech, God punishes the wicked. As Job is being punished, he must have done something wrong. And there's some repetition among the friends. They're basically ganging up on Job. And third speech, person cannot be righteous before God. How can man be in the right before God? How can he who is born of woman be pure? I think that was kind of a slap at women.
Yeah, don't like that one.
So.
And everyone who was ever born.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Sorry. That.
Wow. Everybody? Yeah.
Well, it kind of supports a concept of original sin. So,
Of course, it was Eve.
Yeah.
Tempted him.
Yeah.
If you buy that story.
Are you rolling your eyes at these friends yet, or?
Yes, I'm rolling my eyes at story.
So then we go to Zophar. He says in his first speech, Job deserved even worse than what he received. In verse 6, He says, know then that God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves. So he's lost everything. He must have really been a bad boy, because God gave him less than what he deserved. Second speech, the one who commits wickedness will suffer for it. A flood will carry off his house, rushing waters on the day of God's wrath. Such is the fate God allots the wicked, the heritage appointed for them by God. So the wicked suffer.
There's been a lot of houses carried away lately. So
Yeah.
really,
A lot of bad people in just a certain area.
Yeah. And anybody remember what Zophar's third speech was about? Nobody. He didn't offer a third speech.
Yeah.
That's why you don't remember it. So we talked about the cycle of 3 speeches by the 3 friends, but Zophar decides to actually stay silent. Now we go to Elihu and what he says to Job and his friends. And he was also very angry with the 3 friends because they had found no way to refute Job and yet had condemned him. So his argument with the friends is, you didn't come up with a persuasive enough argument. So I waited while you spoke. I listened to your reasoning. While you were searching for words, I gave you my full attention, but not one of you has proved Job wrong. None of you has answered his arguments. Does that sound like a young person? Probably a teenager, right? But I tell you in this, you are not right, for God is greater than any mortal. Why do you complain to him that he responds to no one's words? And so Job, of course, earlier is basically saying, God, give me an answer. Why? Forgive me. Let me know what's happening here. And Eli was basically saying he responds to people's complaints, not the other way around. It is unthinkable that God would do wrong, that the Almighty would pervert justice. So again, if this retribution theology is correct, then God couldn't do wrong. It must be that Job is wrong. People cry out under a load of oppression. They plead for relief from the arm of the powerful. He does not answer when people cry out because of the arrogance of the wicked. So Job is crying out, and Elihu is basically saying, you you must be wicked and you're pretty arrogant, expecting God to answer the wicked people. Indeed, God does not listen to their empty plea. The Almighty pays no attention to it. How much less then will he listen when you say that you do not see him? Earlier, Job, in one of his rebuttals, basically says he's gone and looked for God and he doesn't see him. He doesn't see him in the wind. He doesn't see him wherever he looks. And all he wants to do is have an audience with God to air his grievances. Let's see, where was I? How much less then will he listen when you say that you do not seek him, that your case is before him and you must wait for him, and that his anger never punishes and does not take the least notice of wickedness? So Elihu is basically saying he notices wickedness, he does answer. So Job opens his mouth with empty talk without knowledge in multiple words. And I thought this was kind of interesting. I've been reading from the New International Version. This is from the Message. And I just like, this is their paraphrasing of the very previous verse that I just read to you. People are arrogantly indifferent to God until, of course, they're in trouble. And then God is indifferent to them. There's nothing behind such prayers except panic. The Almighty pays them no mind, so why would he notice them? Just because you say you're tired of waiting to be heard, or waiting for him to get good and ready and angry and do something about the world's problems. Reactions? Does that align with your beliefs about God?
You think the first part of that is true?
Okay.
In some cases, but it's hard for me to say that God is indifferent to us. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it.
There was a meme that somebody posted on Facebook this week, and guy was talking to Jesus. Said, how come you let there be war in the world? How come you let there be hunger and homeless people? When are you going to do something about that? Well, that's interesting. I was about to ask you the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I've always kind of believed that God's love and God's caring for the world has to be expressed through us somehow. And if we don't involve ourselves, then, what right do we have to complain to God? Why don't you do something?
I do think we have a tendency, I think, like Ryan said, those first few verses ring somewhat true. I do think that people are indifferent to God in their lives often until trouble strikes. And then all of a sudden we panic and we ask for God to cure the problem for us. The part that I would disagree with, I think many of you probably do too, is that Almighty pays them no mind. It's funny that you can be driving along and have a near collision, and the first thing that I usually say afterwards is "Thank God."
Me too.
Yeah. So it's I do think we call on him when we're in trouble, and that's why daily prayer is probably the best antidote for that. That we simply spend our time daily praying and staying in communication with Father, our Heavenly Parent, or the Creator, whichever you prefer.
But remember, this is the light who's getting it all wrong again.
Yeah.
Trying to say that that's what Job's problem was,
Yeah.
and I don't think it was. So he's criticizing the other three friends for not understanding, but then he goes and doesn't understand himself.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, they're not helpful.
Well,
What I was going to jump in with is that this whole time we have this narrative unfolding with poetry and all. This whole time we are privileged to know what's happening in the heavenly realms. And that kind of creates a dramatic irony because nobody down on earth knows what's going on. Yeah. Just like we unless we've had visions or something, we don't know what's going on in heaven. So so we know that Job is a righteous man, but there's doubt. His friends don't know the true story. So it's just kind of an interesting dynamic this whole way through.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, Job and his friends are totally oblivious to this conversation between Satan and God. Whether you believe that that's fiction or if that's even believable, but at least in the story, they're unfamiliar with it. And I parallel it to say we are often unaware of what's happening in the lives of people sitting around us too. We really don't know what's happening in other people's lives. So
it says that the Almighty pays them no mind. The Bible also says that thousands of look with eyes. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear what Jeremy said.
The Bible also says, in addition to saying that Almighty pays them no mind, he says, Jeremy quoted about 1,000 years is like a blink of an eye to God. So I assume that the impression is that what happens on this earthly realm is very, very small in God's eyes compared to the overall scheme of things, although I think he does pay attention to us.
Maybe he was just blinking his eye. Like
yeah.
And sometimes, you haven't learned the lesson that God wants you to learn quite yet. So.
Yeah. So Job says, how can I contend with God? First cycle he says, but how can mere mortals prove their innocence before God? Though they wish to dispute with him, they could not answer him one time out of 1,000. His wisdom is profound, his power is vast. And so, again, I think, and it's told later on in the book of Job, where God, divine discourse, talks about all that's going on in the universe, all that is that basically saying that the universe is so complex, humans can't understand what's going on. We can argue that also, but
Back then,
pardon?
I said they were figuring things out now. Back then,
yeah,
they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there was very little they understood.
He performs wonders that cannot be fathomed, miracles that cannot be counted. When he passes me, I cannot see him. When he goes by, I cannot perceive him. This is what one of the other friends respond to later on, saying, you say you can't see God, but God is everywhere. You should be able to see God. How then can I dispute with him? Though I were innocent, I could not answer him. I could only plead with my judge for mercy. Even if I summoned him and he responded, I do not believe he would give me a hearing. Reactions to that?
Sometimes we don't believe God answers us because we don't get the answer that we want.
Yeah.
He may be answering us, and we just don't have our ears open to this.
Other comments?
Yeah, well, I was going to say to that, it's like giving somebody a multiple choice test and they come up with a different answer than it's on the, nope, that wasn't part of the multiple choice quiz.
All right. It reminds me of my grandson when he was young. There's a math class, they wanted to show your work. And he thought that was ridiculous because he could figure the answer in time. So he just put the answer, and the teacher wouldn't give him credit.
Yep.
So do we not give credit if we don't explain ourselves fully? I don't know. Yeah.
So as a teacher, I think we get to a point where we just want what we want, and the creative part and we overlook.
Yeah.
And I live in the realm of the overlook.
Yeah.
And so to all that, if somebody gave me a different answer and it was right, I would give them credit for that. And for a bright person, maybe their steps are bigger than our steps. And why not give them credit? I mean, we have to look at all that. And I'm sitting here thinking about this where you were talking about, they kind of created the illusion of what's going on outside the humanly realm. This was written by a person who's also trying to figure out all of this. And so whoever's writing this, they don't have all the answers, and that's what makes this even more complicated. Right? And because I disagree with so much of all this. And I also disagree that they're up there playing this poker game or chess game or whatever with human lives. I can't process all that. And I'm hoping they're trying to make a point, but I'm not sure that they're making the point they want to make. So there we are. That's my struggle with Joe.
Well, what's interesting is in the video, 2 Sundays ago that Jane showed us, it talks about how Job poses this question about why evil things happen to good people. And the narrator basically says, Job never answers the question. The book of Job never answers the question. And I've seen that response several times, that basically the question is posed and there's never really a satisfactory answer.
But thousands of years later, do we have an answer?
No,
We do.
We do, yeah.
Things happen.
well,
It just happens, and it's not any direction. Oh, Joan, you said something nasty to somebody. Zap, now you have a boil. It's not that way.
the answer,
Things just happen.
the answer is exactly the same. We don't know. That's the answer.
Well,
And God did say that in the end of
Yeah.
our Job chapter. I don't know if we're getting that too.
Yeah.
Please tell me we're getting to that today. We're getting to that
Oh,
today,
yeah.
so
On you.
I have to do it next week.
are you next week?
Well, apparently, I thought Dennis was, but I looked at my calendar and now it's me.
Well, congratulations.
We traded, Jane.
Oh, we did. We traded. You did that on purpose.
It was divine providence.
See, that's playing with you.
I
You
am-
did something wrong. Now you have to do it.
God and Satan were up there discussing Landrum. We're going to challenge her.
The pain.
Chess piece was
Ooh.
played.
Okay.
That's why I probably hate
In the little
chess.
story,
I
though,
really
getting back to
don't
the
like
little vignette thing, I liked how the guy had the picture of the 2 monsters.
Mhm.
I can't remember their names.
Behemoth and
Leviathan.
And
Yeah,
Behemoth.
yeah. And so to me, it's like, okay, that's the answer, in my opinion. It's
They're
like you've
monsters?
got these monsters in the world, and God can't take care of everything at once. God is saying to us, you do it. If you think you're so smart and then I'm missing everything, then you try it. And it's like, oh, well, okay, never mind.
Well,
Can't do it either.
I think we have another answer. It kind of piggybacks on what I was saying.
Yeah.
It's something that Latter-day Saints, Community of Christ people believe in, that nobody's mentioned, I don't think. And it starts with the letter A.
Agency.
Agency.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
If
now you're
we
going back
choose-
into the retribution mode, though.
No. If there's
do anything
agency,
wrong.
if we all have agency, then the question becomes, if Karen decides to do something that's harmful to me,
Having trouble over there.
if Karen does something that's harmful to me, and I'm a good person, what control do I have over that? I can react to it.
Yeah.
I can't control what she does.
Okay.
If she's a good person, and I do something bad to her, if I break into her house and steal her property, and so a bad thing has happened to her, who's to blame for that? It's not her action, it's my agency, my choice. So I think that's the answer, is that life is complex because we all have agency.
Well, yeah, but Job didn't cause his boils, and no human being caused that.
I'm disagreeing totally with Job.
Oh.
I don't buy Job's story.
Well,
Sorry.
it goes back to what Paul was talking about. I mean, there's an expectation that people do things like, and the story I know related to that is there's a guy and his house flooded, which, with the hurricane, and he has 3 different rescue people go by him, and he's sitting on his roof, and they're like, "Get in the boat, and we'll save you." And he finally drowns. So he goes to heaven. Let's make believe Jesus, and goes, you should be here. And he goes, "Well, I was waiting for you to save me." And I said, "You have 3 people to save you, and you know, I like that story. Yeah. So
true. Think about the floods and the hurricane, everything that's happening in Florida, and people were advised to leave, and some people decided to wait it out. If something bad happened to them, and 40, 50 people died, I don't remember the final
45.
number. Was that God's fault, or was that their fault because they chose not to follow the advice of the people who were telling them to get out? So, I mean, I go back to saying that each of us make decisions because we have this individual agency, and the combination of that is so complex that some bad things are going to happen to good people, and some good things are going to happen to bad people.
Job was doing everything right, though. You can't use that analogy to Job. You can't. He did nothing wrong. God said that in the very beginning. He did nothing wrong. He's sitting there using his agency. He's ready to die for God rather than blame him.
So that's the human flaw in the story. Is my take on Job, and the author. Human flaws of writing this.
His agency doesn't matter in this story.
Right.
And I can't get to agency with illness.
Right.
Me neither.
Some you can.
But
Some illness
maybe, but
some you can. I mean,
most, a lot not. Right. And I think we've all been angry at God, or when they've taken someone we love.
Yeah.
Through illness, and pray to God to save them and to make this illness go away. Right. So
I'm not
the
saying
agency thing doesn't.
I'm not saying it's the agency of the person who's being afflicted. I'm saying it's the agency of all of us that creates this complex system. Give you an idea. This is highly speculation. I have a friend who passed away yesterday. He worked for a number of years in pharmaceutical on the plant floor. No evidence of it, but I strongly suggest that the cancer that took him was caused by his exposure to chemicals. Now, does he have agency not to work at that place? Yeah, but it was very prosperous for him. It worked very well for him, and he died younger than he should have. When you're in an auto accident, somebody comes along and rear-ends you, like happened to my wife. It wasn't her fault. It was the agency of the gentleman behind her who wasn't paying attention and prevented caused her pain. So I'm saying that each of us make choices that affect other people. Now, that may not be 110% true, but I think that in many cases, you can trace it back to some action that somebody has taken that the ripple effect is that we have tragedy.
I disagree.
Okay. And that's perfectly okay.
Thank you.
Perfectly okay. Let me move on here. I'm not sure how much of this you want me to read for next week.
Whatever, like it. It's your agency.
Well, in that case, I'm leaving the rest.
Yeah. Let it be known that I'm the innocent one.
Well, thank you. Anyhow, I go
How
in
many
this
more
house.
slides do you have?
He had 35. How many did you
I
get?
was gonna say, I know.
Let me see.
I am finishing Job next week, everybody, just FYI.
That's probably a good thing.
I'm exhausted. This is like week
Uh,
4.
we got through, I don't know where we are.
Hey, you're in the 20.
19 of 34.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Well, Jane, you don't have to do a PowerPoint.
And-
Think of it that
No,
way.
I'm doing a PowerPoint.
I'm gonna give him a drink. And,
The problem is the end ones are the most interesting ones where we talk about the comparison between the Wizard of Oz and Job.
Oh, that's what I wanted to do
okay.
today.
Well, then
We'll
just
do
do
that
that next week.
All right, throw it
We
over.
probably hit enough
I'll
of
be on Zoom.
Job's friends chastising him.
Yeah.
And Job trying to
I
defend
wanted to
himself.
at least get what God said. I mean, I love the Leviathan thing,
Good.
so I'll do that.
Good.
Wizard of Oz,
That sounds good to me.
introduction of Psalms is the
I-
one that I wanted to do.
Okay. And Jane, have I ever told you I'm very thankful for you?